The day I found out my sister had been sleeping with my fiancé, I was holding a bouquet of sunflowers. It was a Thursday. I remember because I'd gotten off work early. My boss sent everyone home after the pipes burst in the break room. And I stopped at the grocery store on the way home to grab flowers. Violet loved sunflowers. She always said roses were for people who didn't know each other well enough yet. We'd been together 4 years. We knew each other. Or at least, I thought we did. I came through the front door of our apartment and heard voices. I assumed it was the TV. Violet worked from home on Thursdays, and she had this habit of leaving the bedroom television on while she made lunch. I set the flowers on the kitchen counter and walked down the hall. I won't describe what I saw. I don't think I need to. Some things don't require detail to land. What I will tell you is that one of the people in that room was my sister Renee. My younger sister, who I had helped move to the city 2 years earlier. Who slept on our couch for 3 weeks while she found an apartment. Who Violet had helped paint that apartment. Who I'd taken out to dinner every birthday since she was 12 years old. I stood in the doorway. They both saw me. Nobody said anything for what felt like a full minute. Then my sister said, "It's not what it looks like." It was exactly what it looked like. I left without taking the sunflowers. I drove for a long time that night. I don't even remember where I went. Just highways and off-ramps. And the particular emptiness of suburban sprawl at 9 in the evening. At some point I pulled into a Wawa parking lot and sat there until my hands stopped shaking. Violet called 11 times. My sister called 3. I didn't answer either. I called my best friend, and I told him what happened. He didn't say much, he just said, "Come over." And when I got there, he made me eat something, and then he let me sleep on his couch. He didn't try to make sense of it. He knew there wasn't any sense to make. Over the next few weeks the story came out in pieces. Violet and my sister had been seeing each other for nearly 8 months. It started, apparently, at my sister's housewarming party. The one Violet helped organize. The one I showed up to late, because I was working overtime to save up for an engagement ring. I had the ring, a simple platinum band with a small emerald, because Violet said diamonds were overdone. I'd been planning to propose on our anniversary in March. I had the restaurant reserved. I had a speech written on a notepad in my desk drawer. I threw the notepad away. I called the restaurant and canceled. I put the ring in the back of a closet and tried not to think about what I was going to do with it. Violet moved out of our apartment. I let her keep the furniture we'd bought together because I couldn't stand looking at it. I slept on an air mattress for 2 months. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was fine. I was not fine, but here's the part that made everything worse. The part that, even now, I still have trouble saying out loud without feeling my chest tighten. My parents found out what happened. And they took my sister's side. Not explicitly. Not in a way they'd ever admit to if you asked them directly. But my mother called me a week after everything fell apart, and spent 45 minutes on the phone explaining to me that my sister was going through something, that she'd made a mistake. That family was supposed to be unconditional. She used the word unconditional 4 times. I counted. My father said even less. He texted, didn't call, to say he hoped I was doing okay and that he loved both of us equally. Both of us equally. Like I'd done something to deserve equal consideration in this situation. I want to be clear about something. I am not a perfect person. I've made my share of mistakes in my life. I've been selfish, I've been stubborn, I've shown up late to things that mattered, I've said things I didn't mean during arguments. I'm human, but I had not betrayed anyone. I had not gone behind anyone's back. I had not spent 8 months lying to the person who thought they were building a life with me. That distinction seemed to matter very little to my parents. I threw myself into work after that. I'm a project manager at a construction firm. Commercial builds, mostly. Office parks and medical facilities outside of Pittsburgh. It's not glamorous, but it's steady, and when things are busy, there's enough noise in my head that the other stuff goes quiet. I worked 60-hour weeks for 3 months straight. My boss noticed and gave me a raise. I used it to buy a real bed. I didn't talk to my sister for almost a year. She texted occasionally. Short messages, careful ones, like she was testing whether I'd reply. "I miss you. I know you're angry. I'm sorry. I hope you're okay." I read them all and answered none of them. I wasn't ready. Maybe I was punishing her. Maybe I just didn't have anything to say that wouldn't end in me saying something I couldn't take back. Violet, to her credit, never contacted me again after she moved out. I respected that. Whatever else she was, she understood that I didn't want to hear from her. A year and a half after everything happened, I met someone. Her name is Gwen. She works in healthcare administration. She has a dog named Biscuit. She got to name him before she knew anyone would ever tease her about it. And she laughs at things that are actually funny instead of just being polite about it. I didn't go looking for her. She showed up in my life the way good things sometimes do, sideways, through a mutual friend at a birthday party I almost didn't go to. I told her about my sister and Violet on our 3rd date. I wanted to get it out in the open before things went further. She listened without interrupting, and when I was done she said, That's a lot to carry around. Not "I'm so sorry" in that performative way people do. Not "wow. That's terrible." Just a quiet acknowledgement that it was heavy. I think that's when I knew she was different. Things with Gwen were easy in a way I hadn't known a relationship could be. Not without disagreement or difficulty, we had plenty of both, but easy in the fundamental sense. I wasn't bracing for something to go wrong. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe. I started feeling like myself again. Like a version of myself I actually recognized. And then my sister called to tell me she was pregnant. I found out on a Tuesday morning. I was making coffee when my phone rang. My sister's name on the screen. The first time she'd actually called instead of texting in over a year. I answered because I'd been cautiously, slowly, letting the door back open. We'd had a few conversations over the prior months. Nothing heavy, just checking in. I thought maybe we were figuring out how to be siblings again. She told me she was 7 months along. That she'd been seeing someone, that it wasn't serious, that things hadn't worked out. That she was going to raise the baby on her own. I said congratulations. I meant it, even if the timing of everything made it complicated. I asked if she needed anything. She said she was okay, she had it handled, she just wanted me to know. What she didn't tell me, what I wouldn't find out for another 2 months, was who the father was. It was Violet. I need to explain something here, because I know how that sounds. Violet had transitioned about 6 months after we broke up. She'd been in a relationship with my sister, and during that relationship they'd used a sperm donor. Violet, before transitioning, had provided the sample. They'd planned this together. They'd made this decision together. And then they broke up, and my sister was pregnant, and Violet had stepped back. I don't have any anger about Violet's transition. I want to be clear about that. What I have anger about is that two people who had already dismantled the life I thought I was building decided to keep doing things that would continue reshaping the landscape of my family without ever once asking whether I might deserve a heads up. The baby arrived in March. A little boy. My sister named him after our late grandfather. I didn't go to the hospital. I wasn't ready. My mother called the week after the baby came home. I knew it was coming. I'd felt it in the way her voice had been going careful and deliberate in recent conversations, the way she'd been steering toward something without arriving. She started gently. How was I doing? How was work? How was Gwen? She'd only met Gwen once, at Christmas, but she'd seemed to like her. I answered the questions and waited. Then she said, "Have you thought any more about going to see your sister?" I said I had. I said I wasn't there yet. There was a pause. Then she's struggling, you know. She's alone with a newborn. She could really use her family. I said I understood that and I was sorry she was having a hard time. Another pause. Longer, I think, my mother said slowly, that maybe this is an opportunity. For you and your sister. And for you and, she paused again, for you and the baby. You'd be a wonderful uncle. And he's going to need strong men in his life. I said, Mom, he has a father. Violet isn't in the picture right now. That doesn't make him my responsibility. There was silence on the line. Then my mother said quietly, in the particular tone she used when she was trying not to sound like she was issuing a verdict. He's your family, Daniel. And there it was. I'd been waiting for it. And it still hit me somewhere unexpected, like pressing a bruise you forgot was there. Because what she was saying, what she'd been building toward, I realized, for the last several weeks of careful conversations, was that she wanted me to step in. Not just as an uncle who visited on holidays. She wanted me to be present in a consistent, father-adjacent way for a child whose existence was the direct result of my sister and my ex-fiancée's affair. She wanted me to patch over what they had broken, because that was tidier than making them face it. I told her I needed to think about it. I got off the phone and I sat in my kitchen for a long time. That night I told Gwen. She listened the whole way through, and when I finished, she said, "What do you want? Not what does your mom want, not what would make things easier, what do I want?" I said I didn't know. She said, "Yes you do." The next conversation with my mother went worse. She'd apparently been talking to my father, and when she called again a few days later, she did upgraded, from suggestion to something more pointed. She said my sister was overwhelmed. She said Violet was out of the picture indefinitely. She said the baby deserved stability, and I was the most stable person in the family, and didn't that mean something? I said, "You keep telling me what the baby deserves. Has anyone talked about what I went through?" She went quiet. I said, "Mom, I had a fiancé, we had an apartment, I had a ring, I had a speech written, and my sister helped take that apart. Not accidentally, not in a moment of poor judgment, but deliberately, for 8 months. And now you're asking me to walk into that situation and play dad." She said very softly. "I know it's not fair. Then why are you asking? Because fair isn't always the point." I heard that. I understood what she meant by it, in the abstract. Life isn't fair, and children don't choose their circumstances, and sometimes people rise to situations because the alternative is that an innocent person suffers. I've thought about this a lot. I'm not a monster. I understand nuance. But here's what I also understand. There was another option sitting right there, Ignored, like a chair nobody wanted to acknowledge was in the room. My sister was the mother. Violet, whatever her current circumstances, was the other parent. My parents were the child's grandparents. Any of them, or all of them together, were better positioned to provide stability than I was. I wasn't related to this child by blood. I was related to the situation by injury. And my mother was standing in my kitchen, asking me to adopt the consequences of someone else's choices, because it would make everyone more comfortable. I said, "You should be having this conversation with Renee. You should be telling her to reach out to Violet, to work out a real arrangement, to stop relying on the assumption that I'll show up and make this easier." My mother said, "Your sister is doing the best she can." I said, "I know, so am I." She left without saying goodbye properly. There was this stiff, loaded silence before she hung up that I recognized from childhood. It was the particular sound of my mother deciding I'd disappointed her, and choosing to let me know, without coming out and saying it. Things were quiet for about 3 weeks. My father called once. Brief. Said he hoped everything would work out. My sister sent a text with a photo attached. The baby, asleep in a bouncer, wearing a striped onesie. I looked at it for a long time. He looked like my sister a little. Around the eyes. I didn't respond right away. I spent a few days sitting with it. Eventually I wrote back. "He's beautiful. I'm glad you're both okay." I meant that. I want to be clear that I meant it. But meaning it didn't mean I was ready to walk into that apartment and hold him. And become a regular presence in his life. Not yet. Not while everything still felt like standing water. Gwen and I talked about it at length. She never told me what to do. That's one of the things I value most about her. But she asked good questions. She asked whether staying away was hurting me, or protecting me, or both. She asked what I imagined my relationship with my sister looking like in 10 years. She asked whether I could imagine having a relationship with a child that was separate from everything else, or whether it would always feel tangled up. I didn't have clean answers. I still don't, entirely. What I knew was this: I was willing to do the work of rebuilding something with my sister. Slowly, carefully, on terms we'd have to negotiate honestly instead of just sliding back into old patterns. I was not willing to be slotted into a role I hadn't agreed to as a way to make a difficult situation more manageable for the people who had caused it. Those two things can both be true. About 6 weeks after the conversation with my mother, I got a call from my sister. Not a text, a call. She asked if she could come over. I said yes. She came on a Sunday afternoon. She left the baby with a friend. She sat at my kitchen table, and she looked tired in the real way. Not aesthetically tired, not movie tired. But the particular exhaustion of a person who has been keeping too many things upright at once and feels the weight of all of them. She didn't open with an apology. I'd expected one, and when it didn't come right away I almost said something. And then she said, "I know what Mom asked you to do." I said, "Okay." She said, "I didn't ask her to do that, I want you to know that." I believed her. My mother is capable of deciding what needs to happen and mobilizing toward it without input from the people most affected. It's a quality that served her well when we were kids and drives everyone insane now that we're adults. "I don't need you to be his father," my sister said. "I need to figure out how to actually co-parent with Violet, which is terrifying and complicated and something I've been avoiding. But I need to figure it out, not dump it on you." I said, "I appreciate that." She looked at me. "I don't think I've ever said sorry to you. In a real way, not in a text, not through a wall of excuses." I waited. "I am sorry," she said. "I made choices that hurt you in ways I didn't fully let myself look at because it was easier not to. And I should have looked at them. You deserved better from me." I didn't cry. I thought I might, but I didn't. I just sat there and felt something in my chest go a little less rigid. I said, "I don't know what we look like from here. I don't know exactly how this goes." She said, "Me neither. I just know I don't want to keep losing you." We talked for almost 3 hours. About everything. About that night, about the 8 months before it, about the year of silence after it, about what our parents had and hadn't gotten right when we were growing up and how that played out in all of us. About what she was scared of as a mother. About Gwen. About the ring I never got to use, which I finally told her about, and she put her face in her hands for a moment and then looked back up at me with red eyes. We didn't fix everything that afternoon. I want to be honest about that. I know the instinct in a story like this is to reach for resolution, and I understand why people want it. But some things aren't resoluble in a single conversation at a kitchen table. They're processable, slowly, over time, with honesty, and a willingness to keep showing up even when it's uncomfortable. But something shifted. Something that had been locked opened, just slightly, just enough. I met my nephew for the first time 3 weeks after that. My sister brought him over on a Saturday morning. He was about 10 weeks old by then. Alert in that particular newborn way, where they stare at things like they're filing information for later. He had a lot of hair. I held him for a while. He grabbed my finger in his fist the way babies do, that reflexive grip that means nothing, and somehow means everything all at once. I'm not going to tell you it erased anything. It didn't. I'm not going to tell you I immediately felt like family again. It was more complicated than that. It was the specific strangeness of loving someone new while still carrying something unresolved. But I held him, and I thought about what my sister had said about not wanting to keep losing me. And I thought about Gwen at home, probably walking biscuit, probably making the pour over coffee she insists tastes better than the drip, even though I've done a blind taste test twice, honestly cannot tell the difference. I thought about what it means to choose your family, not to accept whatever arrangement someone else decided is most convenient, but to actually choose, with your eyes open, on your own terms, from a place of your own integrity. I handed the baby back to my sister. She looked at me like she was trying to read something. I said, "Let's just take it slow." She said, "Yeah. Okay. Slow." My mother called the following week. She asked how things were going. I told her I'd met the baby. I told her my sister and I were talking again. She said, "See, I knew you'd come around." I almost let it go. For a second I almost just said yes and changed the subject. But I didn't. I said, "Mom, I want to be clear about something. I'm not doing this because you pushed me into it. I'm doing it because Renee and I worked it out ourselves on our own terms. Those are different things." A pause. "Of course," she said. "I mean it," I said. "What you asked me to do, stepping in as a father to this baby because you decided that was the solution, that wasn't okay. I need you to hear that." Another pause. Longer. Then she said quietly, "I just wanted things to be okay." "I know," I said. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was different. A little smaller, a little less certain. "I suppose I was trying to fix something I helped cause. Your father and I, we enabled a lot of this. The way we handled your sister when she was younger. The way she always knew we'd smooth things over." She paused. "I don't know if that's an excuse. I think maybe it's just the truth." It was more than I expected from her. It wasn't a full reckoning. I don't think my mother is built for full reckonings, and that's something I've made a certain peace with. But it was something real. An admission that had cost her something. I said, "I appreciate you saying that." She said, "I love you, Daniel." I said I loved her too. There are things I still don't have figured out. I want to end somewhere honest. Not somewhere that sounds like resolution, because resolutions are neater than life tends to be. My sister and Violet have started working out a co-parenting arrangement. It's slow and it's halting, and there's a therapist involved, which I think is the right call. I don't know what my relationship with Violet will look like going forward. Probably something distant and civil. Probably something that requires maintenance and care, and the occasional moment of choosing grace when I don't feel like it. My relationship with my sister is genuinely being rebuilt. Slowly, on honest terms. There are weeks when it flows and weeks when we hit something difficult and have to step back and then come back to it. That's how repair actually works, in my experience. Not like a broken bone that knits itself clean, but more like learning a new version of something familiar. My parents are my parents. I love them with the particular complexity of loving people who have shaped you, disappointed you, and tried their best, all at the same time. And Gwen is the person I'm planning to spend my life with. I asked her in February, on a Saturday morning when we were making breakfast, and the light was coming in through the kitchen window in that specific way that makes ordinary things look significant. No restaurant reservation. No speech. I had the ring, a different one she'd offhandedly described once as exactly what she'd choose if she were choosing. I'd been paying attention. She said yes while she was still holding a spatula. The eggs burned. We ate them anyway. I'm telling this story because I think there are people who will hear it and recognize something in it. Not the exact circumstances, which are specific and strange, but the feeling underneath them. The feeling of being asked to absorb damage you didn't cause. By people who love you but love their own comfort slightly more. The particular loneliness of that. The way it tests what you actually believe about yourself and your own worth. What I know now is this. You are not obligated to take on someone else's consequences to make the room feel less awkward. You can love someone, a sibling, a parent, even the small innocent person who came out of all the wreckage, and still hold the line on what you're willing to carry. Those two things can live in the same person. They lived in me. They still do.